You did it.
I love underlying flaw.
The flow is towing, precision as an afro trim. All big letters, but it isn't no acronym. Smack the thing, grin off a chin for crack smoking. DDT the first ball.
To set up our ViewModel, you first need to choose if the default avatar will be in R6 or R15. I personally use R6 as it is simpler to animate and for the nostalgia.
Genuine ball skin, not to call the whole crowd out. It's just a few chumps. They know who you are like a shout out.
Then you're going to make a gun model or take a free one for the toolbox. Make sure there's a mesh or part inside the gun that is the mag. This tutorial will not show how to make your own gun model. Make sure everything in the gun model is unanchored and can't collide. Once you have picked a gun model, create a blank character. Delete the humanoid description and add inside the humanoid an animator controller and an animator. Remove everything inside the head and change the size of the head to the following numbers. Make sure the head is anchored. Delete the legs, the torso, and the humanoid root part. Set the head as the primary part of your model. Set the arms to the following size. We set the arms in different size because this ViewModel will be used when we are in first person, so we need more space to see. Now you just have to make it look like the arms are holding the gun. Once you're done, you can import the parts or meshes inside the gun model into the ViewModel. If you haven't done it already, name your model ViewModel. Then you will need to use the plugin RigLite, which will be linked in the description, to rig our gun onto our ViewModel. The reason why we do this is so that we can animate our ViewModel later on, and also it prevents everything to fall apart. To use the rig plugin, you will first need to click the base part and then the target part. So for example, if I want to attach my gun to my right arm, I will first select my right arm and then my gun. The order matters, and do not forget to link the arms to the head, whom is the base part. Duplicate the ViewModel using Ctrl D and name it ViewTP-Model. Set the arm size of the ViewTP-Model to the following scale. In replicate storage, create a folder and name it your gun name. Drag the two view models inside the folder because later we will need to copy them onto workspace. Create a remote event and name it ViewModel Remote. This remote will let us have the view model also update in the server. Create a server script inside the server script service, and the name doesn't really matter, but I recommend it to be ViewModel server. In the starter pack, create a tool with the gun name. Inside of the tool, create a local script and name it whatever you want, but I recommend it to be ViewModel handler. Speaking of handler, you should also need to create a part inside the tool and name it handle. Set its transparency to 1 and make it not be able to collide. You should now be all set up for the next step.
Spend years at the crib, I don't feel the pain no more. I don't feel the pain no more. Gotta get how I live. I don't feel the pain no more. I don't feel the pain.
Before we start scripting, you're going to have to import a model that is linked in the description. This will let the player move his head depending on where he looks at. We are now going to script. First, create a path name using the tool name. Then add those variables. Most of them will be explained later when using them. We have two versions of our view model, one in the third person and one in the first person. We set a equipped variable that is by default unequipped, so false. We also want some sway when we are going to be in first person, so let's add some variables on that. Twin servers won't be used, but later we will have to. So first, we need to be able to know when our tool is equipped or not. For that, there is already a function to do so, with tool.equipped and unequipped. In a loop using renderStepped, we first check if the player isn't dead, to break the loop if so, otherwise it will just keep running and break our game basically. We also want to check if our gun is equipped, if not, we just return the function. To continue scripting, we first need to know if we are in first person or third person, so we need a function for that. This cframe.p stands for the position of the C-frame. It's an abbreviation. Now we can know when our player is in third person or first person. This is all great, but we haven't done a single thing with our view models. For now, they are just in replicate storage. This is where we're going to create a function that duplicates the first person view model onto the camera of the player. The reason why we add gun name when duplicating is because we need to differentiate the view models if we have multiple guns, because the view models will have the same name otherwise. We will also create a local third person view model for when the client goes into third person. We will develop more the server side later, but it is important that you have it on the local side to avoid client delays for smooth animations. We will also make a function for when we transit from first person to third person. In this case, we just delete the first person view model and create the third person view model, if they exist. Let's not forget to destroy our view models if they exist when we unequip our gun. We can now define our two view models to avoid having to use find first child constantly. Since we are in first person, we check if there is already an existing first person view model. If that's not the case, we create one, and if it is, we move on with our script and also check if there's a third person view model to delete it since we are in first person. We now need to attach the first person view model to the camera of the player. We use functions like to object space or to rotation to apply the same rotation and location of the view model to the camera. For this way, we just use lerp, which delays the execution of the following script. So the movement is delayed by the sway amount. We then move the primary part of the view model, which is the head, the location and the rotation we previously defined. Since the head is the primary part, everything will move along with it because we rigged it previously. And for when we're in third person, we just use the transit function and use pivot 2 to move and rotate our view model along the player's head. Alright, let's test it. I mean, it's alright, but I will have to adjust the view model of the camera to be more upward. Also, you might notice that our arms doesn't match our skin and shirt, and we also have 4 arms in third person. This is a simple fix if you add a shirt inside the 2 view models and add 2 more functions in the local script. Our first function will be to match the view model's arms to the player's skin, color, and shirt. We are only able to match the shirt since there is a humanoid inside the view model. So here we simply get the information we need, like the skin color, the shirt template, and we applied those on the view model right arm and left arm. We also set the real player's arms to a transparency that depends on the prompt when calling the function, 1 being transparent and 0 being visible. Now we apply those functions and it should work. Since our local script works, we need to also make the ViewModel in the server script, since we see nothing in the server. The reason why we need two third-person ViewModels, one in the client and one in the server, is so that both point of views from server and client have no delays or desynchronization. First, we set up our variables. You may notice that this time we use run service since we can't use render stepped in server scripts. Copy the match arms functions and set transparency function from the local script and apply those into the server script. And now we just create a third-person ViewModel like in the local script, with the difference being the name, which is ViewModel TPS, so no local. We use a loop to move the arms onto the players when the equip variable is true on the execution of the remote event. We also use lerp when updating the C frame because for some reason there is no delay without it, which makes it look like the arm move before the body without it. And eventually, when the tool is unequipped, it will close the connection and destroy the ViewModel. Go back to your local script and fire the events on equip and unequip. And make sure to delete the ViewModel server version from the client side point of view so that the player doesn't see it. When testing it, the ViewModel should also appear in the server.
Get killed for these hoes. Making racks every day when I'm out on the road. I ain't stunning these broke ass bitch. And the club get turned up for show, but I still got the pole. Try to reach for the China, I handle the beat. 2 shots in the
Before scripting, we will need a reference part for aiming in first person. So duplicate the head of your ViewModel. And change its size to a smaller size. Keep it anchored and name it aim part. Once you place it in on the location of aiming, you can set the transparency of the aim part to 1 and put the ViewModel back into the folder. We will first need some variables to define how much time it will take to aim and unaim, depending on if we're in first person or third person. On top of that, we will also need to aim C-frame for the first person aiming. We'll also need to get a variable to see if we're aiming or not and set it by default to false. We will develop the twin service as we are going to use it to smoothly aim in the third person. For the first person, it's pretty easy. In our loop, we just have to add a few lines. First, define your aim part. Then we check if we are aiming. If we are, we just move the aim part, which will move the whole ViewModel closer to the camera, and if not, we simply set the MC frame back to 0. We use lerp again for a smooth animation. For the third person, we're going to modify the player's FOV instead of changing the camera location. So we create a zoom camera function that, using twin services, will set the player new FOV using the variable prompted when calling the function. Create a handle aiming function which we'll later write in it. To know if we're aiming or not, we need the player user input service, which will grant us access to the inputs of the player on his keyboard or mouse. In our input function, we first need to check if the player has his gun equipped. What we can do for now is set back the FOV to normal when the input stops. We set the FOV to 70 within the aiming time of the third person variable. Then you can copy what we did in the input ended function into the handle aiming function and change the FOV to 45. We need to make sure when we unequip our gun or when we switch into first person that our FOV reverts back to normal. And it works.
The flow is toe-in, precision as an afro trim. All big letters, but it isn't no acronym.
This is the end of the first part of the series. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting with this tutorial, but I feel like focusing on quality rather than quantity is better. The next part will include shooting, ray tracers, and recoil. A lot of effort went in making this video, so if you could subscribe or like or comment, I would really appreciate it. We are almost at 1K subscribers. Anyways, that's all for me. See you soon.
Place them in your loud mouth and taste them like a pastry. Waste of space, face hastily, bow out gracefully. Disappear, reappear, disappear again. Villain not is here, he's no Afro-American. If that's the case, he'd be a bald-headed African, taking all the credit and jetted astral traveling. Turn a man into a mannequin for Aflakin and being tough acting, to acting bluff.